the N-word policing. Isn't the freak of nature policing and the N-word police, aren't they kind of cousins to one another somehow? And isn't the word Negro, which is in the sights of these people, would you fall on your sword to protect the word Negro? Not because you want to use it, but because it's a legitimate word that has a very long and dignified history in the linguistic culture of African Americans from the 19th and 20th century. And it doesn't make any sense whatsoever to ban the word Negro, which is not the Nigger word. It's a different word with a capital N. The Negro of the mid 20th century was a dignified person. I mean, so the American Negro is a phraseology that you'll find in social textbooks and in history, in journalism, the advancement of the American Negro, the history of the American United Negro Improvement Association. Isn't that what Marcus Garvey called his organization, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So that's a question about language policing and whether or not something is worth fighting for, and does Negro fall within that in that frame?
There are a few things that make it clearer that there's a certain kind of person who gets off on being offended, that it's becoming wrong in some circles to even use the word Negro. And we end up shooting ourselves in the foot because so many wonderful things that we did in the past are called Negro. And so, for example, one of the best classical pieces one of the old-time Black classical composers wrote was called Negro Folk Symphony. It's by William Levi Dawson. That's what he called it because he's in black and white pictures. That's what it was called. Negro Folk Symphony. Do you know that there are conductors across the United States who are refraining from performing the piece because they're afraid of its title and they don't want to get in trouble because of these people who are pretending that there's something wrong with the word Negro? It's now considered a little bit risky to deal with the piece because of its name. And so the people who are pretending to be offended by the use of the word Negro are creating things like that. And yeah, Negro isn't a slur at all. But yeah, it's funny. I'm looking at a book right now. It's a gathering of pieces on race that the New York Times did about 20 years ago. It was actually a very good volume. It was called How Race Has Lived in America. And I remember there was one piece in that was about a rapper. And I'll never forget, I still remember the phrase. A white reporter is interviewing this aspiring rapper, a young black man, and he actually says, "I'm valid when I'm disrespected." He actually lays that out. The validity, you sense a validity, you sense a legitimacy, you sense yourself as important when you can complain about the fact that somebody is disrespecting you. He openly says it about that strain in his own music. And, that is something that describes a whole Black sensibility. Not all Black people. I suspect it's not the majority, but it's overrepresented among the people who have the pulpit of the media and academia and the written word. And so, you've got the N word, and the truth is that people actually using it, it's relatively rare, and it's only one thing, and maybe you get a little bored, and so you start looking for other things to be offended about. So how about Negro? But it serves no purpose because there are Black people really suffering, and you should be channeling your energy into that. It's based on something that doesn't make any damn sense, and yet you insist it does. And so non-Black people stand by pretending you're making sense, but quietly thinking that there's something wrong with you. And it ends up meaning that people avoid discussing things that have that word in it. If you can't say Negro, you can't read out loud half of what Martin Luther King wrote. And that's really becoming an issue. Or you have to read it with, saying, N-word or something like that. This isn't the way things should be. I've written that piece. I did that in the Times. It's just, no, we don't need to make Negro into the new slur. Why do we need to have a slur to be offended about? What kind of frame of mind is that?
But it's not a slur. I mean, nigger is a slur. You call somebody something with the intention of injury. Unless you're a rapper referring to the guy on the corner who's also a rapper and is getting more downloads than you're getting. And, that nigga ain't got nothing going that I don't, et cetera. Negro is not a slur. It is this is a manufactured offense, it would appear to me. There's no intention in the use of the word Negro to denigrate. That's the, whereas the N word can be used in such a way where it's very clear that the intention of the speaker is to denigrate. The word Negro with a capital N is merely a word. It doesn't have that connotation at all, at least as far as I'm aware.
Never did. But it sounds kind of like the N word. And so people have decided that we're supposed to be offended about it because black people are only real if we're offended.
The question one is, what then should black people be called? Should we be called black? Should we be called African American, et cetera? And two, why is this issue of how black people are referred to and the sanitizing and policing of it so vitally important? Is there any comparable set of debates that goes on for other identity groups? I don't know, Jews or Italians or Irish or whatever. This question to you,
I
Mr.
remember,
Linguist.
and no, not to my knowledge, people are not as obsessed with this issue of what one is called. And so, for example, an analogy, at some point in the late 80s, Hispanic went out of fashion in certain circles, and we started saying Latino. Yeah. But notice that Hispanic is not treated as a slur. It's still around. You see it on paper. Many Latinos still refer to themselves as Hispanic. Nobody is going to throw a rock at you if you use Hispanic. Latinos don't seem to be as caught in this obsession with what we're going to be called, except, frankly, a certain group of academic Latinos who would, I think, vociferously disagree with me. But in the neighborhood I live in Queens, i.e. Latino people living real lives, I can quite definitely say that Hispanic is not a slur. And for some of them, Latino is a little bit pretentious. And it just means that they are more concerned with real life rather than these names. It's one of these fish don't know their wet things, because it seems so ordinary that black people, some, are that concerned with the names and whether you're going to capitalize black or not. I remember I sat in on a class on black film when I was a grad student at Stanford, when I was naive, I'm 25, and I just wanted to learn some stuff about black film. So every week I think we had to watch a black film. We had watch one, and then we would have this discussion. I only lasted 4 or 5 classes because I thought we were going to learn about black people in the movies from the dawn of time until then. And it was an important time then because there had been the new spate of black movies, starting with Spike Lee's work and John Singleton's work. But that wasn't it. Tacitly, the idea was that the discussion was going to be about stereotyping and racism. And of course, you're going to talk about stereotyping and racism. You can't see Birth of a Nation and not talk about it. But as we started moving through the century, I saw that all anybody wanted to talk about was racism, as if that's the only interesting thing to say about all the things that black people have been doing in the movies for, over a century now. So I just had to go. I realized this is not a class about black film. This is a class about racism, where we use films to stimulate conversations about how the white man is, doing bad things to the black community. That was typical. And that's what this name thing is. The essence of blackness is complaint and anger and being offended. It does us in. I honestly believe that.